Luke Carter rode slowly into the small western town as the sun was dipping behind the long open plains. His horse, Dusty, moved with steady steps, tired from many days on the trail. Luke had been working with a cattle group far from town, and now he finally had a few days to rest. As he rode down the dusty main street, he lifted his hat to wipe the sweat from his forehead. The warm evening breeze carried the smell of dry earth, horses, and fresh bread from the bakery. This familiar place felt peaceful after weeks of hard work. Luke guided his horse toward the old trading post. He needed new supplies, water, dried meat, and some rope. Nothing special, just enough to get him through another month on the cattle range. He tied Dusty to the post and walked inside. The wooden floor creaked beneath his boots as he entered the dim but warm shop. A few townspeople were inside, talking softly about their day. Luke nodded politely and moved toward the shelves. He was reaching for a bag of beans when he heard a voice behind him. It was calm, gentle, but also filled with confidence. The kind of voice that made a person stop and listen without thinking. "Don't you recognize me, cowboy?" Luke froze for a moment. Something about the voice echoed inside him, as if he had heard it long ago, maybe in another lifetime. He turned slowly, and the moment his eyes met the young woman standing a few steps away, he felt a strange mix of surprise and confusion. She was an Apache woman, dressed in a simple but beautiful traditional outfit. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. Her eyes, deep and steady, held a quiet strength, as if she had seen much more than she showed. She stood tall and calm, looking at Luke as if she already knew him well. Luke stared at her, trying to place her face in his memories. She looked familiar, but he couldn't say how. Her presence alone felt powerful, not in a loud way, but in a peaceful yet firm way. People inside the shop stopped talking for a moment and glanced at her. It wasn't common to see Apache visitors inside the trading post unless they came for something important. But this woman didn't seem nervous. She stood with dignity, as if she belonged anywhere she chose to stand. Luke cleared his throat and lowered the bag of beans slowly. "Sorry, miss," he said politely, "but I don't quite—" She smiled gently, not offended at all. In fact, the smile made her look even more familiar. Something inside Luke stirred. A memory trying to rise from years of dust. "I'm Nalin," she said softly. "You knew me a long time ago." Nalin. The name hit Luke like a cool breeze in the middle of a hot day. It felt familiar in a warm, distant way. He had heard that name before, not recently, but when he was young, very young. A time when life was simple, when playing under the trees meant more than working under the open sun. Luke blinked as memories began to drift slowly into his mind. A little girl, laughing near a stream, dark hair flying in the wind, small footprints in the soft dirt, two children running between tall pines, sharing berries and climbing rocks, a young Apache girl teaching a small cowboy boy how to track rabbits, a boy teaching her how to whistle with a piece of grass. Luke's heart gave a small jolt. "Nalin?" he whispered, almost afraid his memory was wrong. She nodded, looking relieved that he finally remembered. "Yes. I was hoping you would recognize me." Luke couldn't speak for a moment. It had been more than 10 years since he last saw her. Back then they were children, barely 8 or 9 years old. He hadn't seen her since the day her tribe packed their things and left the area. Back then, tensions between settlers and Apache people were growing, and families sometimes moved to avoid trouble. Luke had never forgotten that day. He remembered standing by the fence, holding a small feather she had given him. He remembered watching the long line of horses and wagons moving slowly down the valley until they disappeared behind the trees. He waited for her to turn around and wave goodbye. She never did, or maybe she had, and he just missed it. But he remembered feeling something strange for the first time. Loss. Now she was here, standing in front of him like a piece of his childhood suddenly given back. "How long has it been?" Luke asked quietly. "Too long," Nalin replied. "But you look exactly the same, just taller and maybe a bit more tired," she added with a soft laugh. Luke felt himself smile. Her laugh had not changed at all. It still had that gentle spark that lit up a quiet place. "What are you doing here?" Luke asked. "I mean, how did you find me?" "I didn't come here for the town," she said. "I came here for you." Those words took Luke by surprise. He felt the air around him shift. The shop seemed quieter now. The people who had been listening pretended to look at the shelves, but everyone knew something unusual was happening. "For me?" Luke repeated. "Yes," Nayland said, her voice steady. "I've been searching for you for days. I asked around when I reached town. Someone said a cowboy named Luke Carter often passes through. And I hoped it was the same Luke I knew." Luke's mind raced through possibilities. Why would she come all this way? Why now, after so many years? He felt something inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. A mix of curiosity, warmth, and a touch of fear. Not fear of her, but fear of what her visit might mean. Nalin stepped closer but still kept a respectful distance. She was careful, thoughtful in her movements, as if she understood the space between two people who were no longer children but not yet strangers. "There is something important I must tell you," she said slowly, "and something I need your help with." Luke frowned slightly, unsure where this was going. The world outside felt still, as if waiting. "What kind of help?" he asked. Before answering, Nalin studied his face for a long moment. It was as if she was searching for the boy she had known long ago. And maybe she found him, because she sighed with relief. "I will explain everything," she said softly. "But not here." Luke felt the truth of her words. The trading post was filled with curious eyes. Whatever she needed to say was not meant for strangers' ears. He nodded once. "All right, let's step outside." As they walked toward the door, Luke felt a strange sense of destiny forming around him. A childhood friend had returned. A friend he thought he would never see again. A friend who had left without goodbye. And now she had come with a purpose. Outside, the warm evening light wrapped around them. The sky turned shades of orange and pink, painting the town in soft colors. Dusty lifted his head when he saw Luke, but even the loyal horse seemed to sense that something important was happening. Nalin turned to face him fully. Her eyes held a mixture of sadness, determination, and hope. "Luke," she said quietly, "I came back because I need someone I trust. And you are the only person who ever saw me as a friend, not someone different. That is why I came." Luke's heartbeat slowed, and something deep inside him opened like a door. The long-lost girl he once knew had returned, not by chance, but with purpose. And he sensed that life was about to change in ways he never expected. Luke stood quietly in the warm evening air, trying to understand everything that was happening. Seeing Nalin again after so many years felt almost unreal. She looked different from the little girl he used to know, yet something in her eyes, her smile, and her gentle way of speaking reminded him of the past. Memories he had not touched in years began to rise slowly, like soft waves in a quiet pond. As the two of them walked away from the noisy part of the town, Luke found himself wanting to fill the silence with questions. But he didn't know where to begin. Nalin seemed calm, as if she understood the thoughts running through his head. She walked with steady steps, her presence peaceful and strong at the same time. They stopped near the edge of town where a small wooden fence separated the open land from the line of buildings. The sky above them was turning darker, and a few stars had already started to shine. Nalin leaned lightly against the fence, looking out at the wide plains. "Luke," she said softly, "do you remember anything from our childhood?" Luke took a deep breath. Some things, he replied, but it feels like another lifetime. Nalin smiled gently. Maybe it was. But for me, it was the beginning of everything. Her words opened the door to his memories even wider. He closed his eyes for a moment and let those memories come back clearly, one after another. He remembered being a small boy living on a ranch with his parents. Their home sat near a stretch of woods that led to an open valley. Back then, Luke had a habit of wandering off when his chores were finished. He loved exploring, climbing trees, and pretending he was a brave cowboy who could travel the world. His parents told him to be careful, but even as a child, he didn't like staying in one place for too long. One day, while following a stream deeper into the woods, he heard the soft voice of a girl singing. Curious, he pushed through the bushes and saw a small Apache girl kneeling near the water, watching the fish swim. She didn't run away when she saw him. Instead, she simply looked at him with bright, curious eyes. That was the first time Luke met Nalin. He remembered standing awkwardly, unsure if he should speak or leave. But Nalin broke the silence first. "Do you want to see something?" she had asked in a cheerful voice. Without waiting for his answer, she had gently placed her hand in the stream, moving it slowly so the tiny fish swam close. Luke had been amazed. He didn't know how she did it, but the way she moved seemed gentle enough to make even the water trust her. From that day forward, Luke visited the stream often. Every time he came, Nalin seemed to appear from somewhere, sometimes from behind a tree, sometimes from the tall grass, and sometimes from the rocks above the stream. It was as if the woods were her home, and she belonged to every part of it. Luke remembered how she taught him things he never learned on the ranch. She showed him how to listen to the wind, how to read footsteps in the dirt, and how to recognize different bird calls. Nalin understood the land like an old friend. Her laughter echoed through the woods whenever Luke slipped into the stream or tripped over a root. But she always helped him back up, brushing dirt off his clothes while trying to hide her smile. He remembered sharing simple things back then: berries, stories, dreams, and the joy of being young with no worries. Sometimes they sat under a tall pine tree and built small houses from sticks and stones. Sometimes they tried to whistle with blades of grass. Luke taught her how to do it, and she would practice until she got it right. When she finally did, she made the sound even better than he could. As Luke opened his eyes again, he looked at Nalin, surprised by how clear those memories felt after so many years. "I remember a lot more now," he said quietly. "You were the best part of my childhood." Nalin looked at him with warm eyes. "And you were mine," she replied. She continued, her voice calm and reflective. "When we were children, things seemed simple. But our families lived in different worlds. There were times when people on both sides didn't trust each other. My parents always told me to be careful. But they also knew I had a gentle friend in the woods. They believed good friendships were gifts, even if life around us was difficult." Luke nodded. His own parents had warned him to be respectful around the Apache people, but also told him never to judge someone without knowing them. That advice had shaped him since he was young. Maybe that was why he and Nalin became close so naturally. "But then," Luke said slowly, "your tribe left. I never understood why." Nalin looked down for a moment, sadness passing through her eyes. "There were problems," she explained softly. "Arguments over land, misunderstandings, fear, small things that grew into bigger things. My family knew it wasn't safe to stay, so one night they told me we had to leave before sunrise." Luke listened carefully as she continued. "I wanted to tell you," she said, "but everything happened very fast. My mother woke me up when the stars were still bright. We packed quietly and left before the sun came up. I looked back many times hoping to see you so I could say goodbye, but you weren't there." Luke felt something tighten inside him. "I was sleeping," he said quietly. "I didn't know." "I know," she replied gently. "That's why I never blamed you. But I carried that memory with me. I kept wondering what you would have said if you had known we were leaving." Luke stared out at the plains. He remembered that morning, too. He had walked to the stream, waiting for Naylin like he always did. She never came. He had waited many days after that, hoping she would return. When he realized she was gone, he had felt a kind of sadness he didn't understand as a child. "But you never forgot," Luke said softly. "No," Nahlin replied. "Some people stay in your heart no matter how far you go." Her words were simple, but they held a truth that made Luke's chest feel both heavy and warm. "Did you ever think you'd come back?" he asked. "Many times," she said. "But life kept moving. I grew older, learned many things, helped my tribe, and lived with new challenges. Still, I always wondered if you were all right, if you were still the same boy who gave me half his berries even when he was hungry." Luke chuckled. "I remember that," he said. "You loved those berries more than I did." "I still do," she said with a small laugh. For a moment it felt like they were children again, two friends sitting together without worry, sharing simple memories that shaped who they became. Then Nahlin's expression softened into something more serious. "But I didn't come back only because of memories," she said. "The past gave me strength to return, but now the present needs your help." Luke turned toward her. "I want to understand," he said. "Tell me everything." Nahlin took a slow breath, as if preparing herself. "My tribe is facing a problem," she began. "Something that began small but is now growing bigger. I remembered you as someone who stands up for what is right, someone who listens and doesn't judge quickly. That is why I came to find you." Her voice was steady, but Luke noticed the worry behind it. "But before I tell you the full reason," she said gently, "I needed to know if you still remembered who I was. I needed to know if the bond we had long ago still lived somewhere inside you." Luke looked directly at her, his voice firm and honest. "I remember, and I'm here. Whatever you came to say, I won't turn away." Nahlin's eyes softened, and for the first time since her return, she looked relieved, like she had reached a safe place after traveling a long road. Their childhood bond had survived the distance, the years, and the silence. And now it was about to lead them into a new journey neither of them had expected. The wind grew softer as night slowly covered the open land, but something in the air felt heavier now. Luke could sense that whatever Nahlin was about to tell him was not small. Her calm face, her steady voice, and the long journey she had taken to find him all pointed to something serious. He waited quietly, giving her time to gather her thoughts. Nahlin looked out across the plains before speaking. "The reason I came back," she said slowly, "is because something valuable to my tribe has been taken, and I believe it was taken by people who move through these lands." Luke listened with full attention. "What was taken?" he asked gently. "Our horses," Nahlin answered, her voice heavy but controlled. "Not just a few, a whole group. They were taken in the night. My people searched the land for days, but we could not find signs near our home. The tracks led far beyond our territory, into plains your people often travel." Luke frowned, thinking carefully. Horses were important to every tribe, every ranch, every traveler. Losing them was not just losing animals. It meant losing transport, protection, and part of their daily life. "Horses don't just disappear," he said quietly. "Someone had to take them." "Yes," Nahlin replied, "and the tracks show more than one person was involved. They were not Apache." She paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "These men have passed through different places. Some say they steal from anyone they can. Settlers, travelers, tribes. They leave quickly, always moving." Luke nodded slowly. He had heard rumors, too. Sometimes people talked about a small group of outlaws traveling with stolen goods, stolen cattle, and sometimes stolen horses. No one knew exactly where they camped, but their tracks were seen near rivers and rocky plains. "You think it's them?" Luke asked. Nalin nodded. "Yes. Their footprints, the marks their horses left, and the way they moved all match what we've heard. We followed the trail as far as we could. But then the land opened wide, and the tracks scattered. My people needed to return home to protect what remained. I couldn't let the trail end there." "So you came here," Luke said, understandingly. "Yes," she replied. "I knew you lived somewhere in this region. I hoped you were still the person I remembered, the one who helped without expecting anything." Luke leaned against the fence, thinking quietly. "But why me?" he asked softly. "There are many men in this town who know the land. Why not ask them?" Nalin turned to him fully, her expression serious but warm. "Luke," she said, "I know many people. I have seen how they speak of each other, how they speak of my people. Many would turn away before hearing anything. Many judge quickly. But you—" She paused, searching for the right words. "You were always different. Even as a child, you treated me like a friend, not like someone separate." Luke felt her words settle deeply inside him. She was right. Even now, some people in town still carried old fears or misunderstandings. Asking anyone else might bring trouble instead of help. Nalin continued, "I came because I trust you, and because I believe you understand that wrong is wrong, no matter who it happens to." Luke took a slow breath. The idea of chasing outlaws across open land was dangerous. These men were known for being fast, careless, and unpredictable. But he also knew that helping Nalin wasn't just helping one person. It meant helping her tribe, who depended on those horses. And he remembered the little girl who once shared berries with him, who taught him how to read the ground and listen to the wind. "What would you like me to do?" he asked quietly. Nalin's face softened with relief. "I want to find where they took the horses," she said. "Not fight them. Not confront them. Just find the place. My tribe can handle the rest. But I cannot follow their tracks alone, and you know these lands better than many." Luke ran his fingers along the wooden fence as he thought. He had seen many tracks during his years working with cattle. He knew how to read dust, how to notice small signs others overlooked. Maybe he really could help her. "When did this happen?" he asked. 4 days ago," she replied. "We followed the trail for almost 2 days. Then the ground changed and the tracks grew faint." Luke nodded. 4 days is not too long. The tracks might still be readable if the wind hasn't been too strong. "That's what I hope," Nalin said, her voice steady but with a quiet sadness. "My tribe depends on those horses for travel, for carrying goods, and for protecting our homes." Luke felt something inside him shift. He already knew his answer, but he took one more moment to think through the risks. He had work waiting at the cattle range, but it could wait. There was a right thing to do, and this was it. "I'll help you," he said finally. "We'll start in the morning." Nalin let out a breath she seemed to have been holding. "Thank you, Luke. I knew you would listen." Luke felt a small smile form. "It's been a long time, Nalin, but some things don't change." They walked back toward the main street where Dusty, Luke's horse, waited patiently. The sound of laughter and music drifted from the saloon, but Luke didn't feel drawn to the noise. His mind was already focusing on what came next. "Where are you staying tonight?" Luke asked. "I have a small place outside town," she said. "A quiet spot under a cottonwood tree. I prefer staying closer to nature." Luke nodded, not surprised. "If you need supplies, I can help." "I have what I need," she replied with a warm smile. "But thank you." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sky grow darker. The first cool breeze of the night brushed against them. Luke looked at her, noticing again how calm she remained, even with the worry she carried. "You traveled far to find me," he said thoughtfully. "Yes," Nalin answered. "But finding you was the easier part. Asking for help. That took more courage than I expected." Luke looked at her with quiet respect. "You did the right thing." Nalin lowered her gaze briefly. "I hope so." Luke noticed her tone and gently said, "We'll find the tracks, and we'll follow them as far as we can." She nodded. "I know we will. You always kept your promises even when we were young." Luke felt warmth at the memory. "You kept yours too," he said, "even if you had to leave without saying goodbye." That made Nalin look up with soft eyes. "Life sometimes chooses for us," she said, "but this time, I chose to come back." The night had fully settled now, bringing cooler air and a soft silence. Luke tightened Dusty's reins, preparing to head home. "We leave at sunrise," he said. "Meet me here at first light." "I will be here," Nalin replied firmly. As Luke mounted his horse, Nalin stepped back, giving him space. He looked down at her one more time. "Nalin," he said quietly, "it's good to see you again." She smiled in a way that warmed the quiet night. "And it's good to be remembered." Luke tipped his hat before riding off into the shadows, Dusty's hooves tapping gently against the ground. Nalin watched him disappear into the darkness, her expression filled with hope and determination. The journey ahead would not be easy. The land was wide, the trail uncertain, and the men they would search for were unpredictable. But she believed she had found an ally she could trust. For the first time in days, Nalin felt a quiet strength return to her heart. She was no longer alone. The first light of dawn spread slowly across the plains, touching the land with soft gold. Luke arrived early at the meeting spot, riding Dusty through the cool morning air. The town was still quiet, with only a few people awake. He felt the familiar weight of the saddle, the steady breathing of his horse, and the calmness that always came before a long journey. He checked his supplies: water, a little food, rope, and a small bag of tools he often used on the cattle range. As the sun climbed higher, he spotted Nalin walking toward him from the edge of town. She moved gracefully, as if she was a natural part of the land itself. Her long dark hair shone softly under the rising sun, and her calm expression made Luke feel more confident about the journey ahead. "You're early," she said with a small smile. "So are you," Luke replied. Nalin carried a small woven bag and a light blanket. She looked ready to walk for miles without complaint. "Are you sure you don't need a horse?" Luke asked gently. "I travel better on foot," she said. "But don't worry, I can keep your pace." Luke nodded. He knew she meant it. As children, she always moved faster and smoother through the woods than he did. "Then let's start," he said. They set off together, leaving the quiet town behind. The land stretched out ahead, wide and open, painted with morning colors. The soft wind carried the fresh smell of grass, and every now and then a bird flew overhead, singing into the new day. Luke guided Dusty along a narrow path while Nalin walked beside them. She studied the ground carefully, sometimes stopping to look at broken grass or marks in the dirt. "These tracks," she said after a while, "were made by horses, but not wild horses." Luke leaned down to look. "You're right, their hooves were trimmed by human hands." They followed the signs slowly. Some tracks were clear, others faint. But Nalin seemed to read the land like a story written for her. She noticed things Luke might have missed: small stones moved out of place, flattened patches of grass, and markings near the base of trees. After a few hours, Luke finally said, "I forgot how good you are at this." Nalin smiled. The land speaks. You just have to know how to listen. They traveled for several hours more, talking about simple things, childhood memories, favorite places, and the people they had met in their separate lives. Luke learned that Nalin had helped her tribe with healing herbs, travel routes, and teaching children about nature. She had grown into someone wise and patient, yet still carrying the spark of the girl he once knew. By midday, they reached a rocky area near a dried stream. The ground here was harder to read, and Luke felt unsure. But Nalin knelt down, touching the dry dirt with gentle fingers. "They passed through here," she said. "I see signs of 3 horses. One was carrying weight." Luke studied the ground beside her. "And the men?" She nodded. "2 of them, maybe 3. Luke felt the pieces falling into place. "They're moving fast." "Yes," Nalin replied, "but not fast enough to hide everything." They continued, climbing over rocks and weaving through scattered bushes. The sun grew warmer, but neither of them complained. Luke glanced at Nalin from time to time, impressed by her steady pace. She didn't tire easily and never lost focus. In the afternoon, they reached a valley with tall grass swaying gently. Luke noticed something unusual near a fallen log, broken branches, marks of hooves, and disturbed soil. "This looks like a place where they rested," he said. Nalin walked around the area, carefully studying the signs. "Yes," she agreed. "They stopped here. The horses drank water from that shallow pool." She pointed toward a muddy patch where small hoofprints were visible. Luke knelt beside the pool, touching the damp earth. "This water dries fast in sunlight, so they must have been here last night or early morning." Nalin's expression grew serious. "We're closer than I expected." They rested for a short time, sharing water and a few pieces of dried bread. Luke offered Nalin more, but she shook her head with a gentle smile. "You eat," she said. "I'm fine." Luke wasn't surprised. She had always been strong like that, even as a child. When they continued, the land began to change slowly. Small hills appeared in the distance, and the wind grew sharper. Luke looked toward the horizon and saw thin lines of smoke rising far away. "Someone's camping out there," he said. Nalin followed his gaze. "Yes, but we need to be careful. It may not be them." Luke understood. Smoke meant people, but not all people meant safety. They moved quietly now, choosing a path that allowed them to see the land without being seen easily. The hills gave them natural cover, and the tall grass muffled their steps. As they approached the area where the smoke rose, Luke slowed Dusty down, and Nalin crouched low to the ground. "Let me look ahead," she whispered. Luke nodded. Nalin moved silently through the grass, her steps light and controlled. Luke watched her disappear into the tall blades, feeling a mix of worry and trust. She was brave, sometimes too brave. After a long minute, Nalin returned, moving just as quietly. "There's a small camp ahead," she said softly. 3 men. And 5 horses. Luke's eyebrows drew together. 5? "Yes," she replied. "But they were not all stolen. At least 2 of them belonged to those men. I did not see any markings from my tribe yet." Luke thought carefully. "Are the men armed?" "I didn't see weapons in their hands," she said. "But they may have them nearby. They look relaxed, like they don't expect anyone to follow." Luke nodded slowly. "We should get closer, but not too close." Together they approached the area carefully. Luke tied Dusty to a tree behind them where the horse would stay quiet. Then they moved through the grass until they reached a spot where they could see the camp clearly. 3 men sat near a fire, talking and laughing. They looked like ordinary travelers at first glance, dusty clothes, worn boots, and tired faces. But something about them felt wrong. Maybe it was the way they looked around often, checking the area, or maybe it was the tense way they rested their hands near their belts. Luke studied the horses tied to a wooden post beside the camp. One of them had a pattern of markings on its coat that looked familiar, patterns Nalan had described earlier. "That one," Nalan whispered softly. "That horse belongs to us." Luke's jaw tightened slightly. "So we found the right people." Nalan nodded. "But this is not the whole group. There were more tracks earlier." Luke agreed. "These three might be scouts or part of the group. The rest may be camped somewhere else." They watched for a few minutes more. The men seemed relaxed but alert, like people who didn't trust the land around them. "We cannot confront them," Nalan said. "Not now." "It's not safe." Luke nodded. "We don't need to. We only need to find where they took the rest of the horses." Nalan looked thoughtful. "We need to follow them. Wait until they move again." Luke agreed, but he knew waiting might take hours, or even a whole day. "Let's find a safe place nearby," he said. "We can watch from a distance." They moved back quietly, making sure not to disturb anything or leave obvious marks. Behind a group of rocks covered with low bushes, they found a small shaded area. From there, they could see the camp clearly, but remain unseen. For the first time since morning, Nalan sat down fully, letting her legs rest. Luke sat beside her, watching the camp. "They look like men who want easy profit," Luke said quietly. "The kind who take what they can and move fast." Nalan nodded. "Yes. But they do not know we are close." Luke turned to her. "And we won't let them know. We'll follow carefully, find where the rest of the horses are, and then plan what to do." Nalan looked at him with calm trust in her eyes. "I'm glad I found you, Luke. I could not have come this far alone." Luke felt the truth of her words settle warmly inside him. "We're a team now," he said. Nalan gave a gentle smile. "Just like long ago." They waited quietly as the sun began to set. The orange glow spread across the plains, turning the world soft and warm. The campfire flickered, and the men continued talking, unaware of the two determined friends watching them. For the first time, Luke felt they were finally close to understanding everything. The trail was no longer a mystery, but the hardest part still lay ahead. When Luke and Nalan finally approached the tribe's land with the horses, the sun was slowly sinking behind the distant hills. The warm, golden light touched everything: the trees, the dusty ground, and the horses walking peacefully beside them. After hours of travel, seeing the campfires of Nalan's people glowing in the distance felt like a sign of hope. Luke could feel his tired muscles, but his heart felt strangely light, as if this long journey had changed him from the inside. As they reached the edge of the camp, several Apache men noticed them approaching. Their eyes widened when they saw the missing horses returning safely. A few of the men hurried forward, speaking quickly to each other in their language. Some looked surprised, some relieved, and some curious about the cowboy riding beside Nalan. Luke felt their eyes on him. But he stayed calm. He trusted Nalan, and that trust made him stand tall. One of the older men stepped forward, his face lined with years of wisdom. He looked at Nalan first, searching her expression, and she nodded quietly to him. Then he turned to Luke. There was no anger on his face, only a cautious question in his eyes. Luke offered a small, respectful bow of his head. He didn't know exactly what to say, so he let Nalan speak first. Nalan told her people everything that had happened: how she had followed the tracks, how she met Luke in the town, and how he chose to help her even though it meant putting himself in danger. She spoke slowly and honestly, giving Luke credit for his courage, but never boasting about her own actions. Her voice carried a kind of calm strength that made everyone listen closely. Even children who had been playing nearby stopped and gathered around, curious about the returned horses and the quiet cowboy who had helped bring them home. When she finished speaking, the old man nodded thoughtfully. Then he walked closer to Luke. For a moment, Luke wasn't sure what would happen, but the old man simply placed his hand on Luke's shoulder, a gesture of respect. He said a few gentle words in Apache, and though Luke did not fully understand them, he felt the meaning in the tone. It was acceptance, slow, cautious, but real. People around them began to relax. Some of the women stepped forward to check the horses, brushing their hands over their coats and whispering soft words of gratitude. A few men smiled at Nalan and then at Luke. Children laughed as they tried to pet the smaller horses that had returned. The whole camp seemed to breathe out in relief. Nalan turned to Luke with a slow smile. "They are thankful," she said. "And so am I." Luke felt warmth in his chest, a feeling he had not known for a long time. "I'm glad I could help," he said quietly. "Your people care deeply for their animals. It feels good to see them safe again." Nalan nodded softly. "It means more than you know." The tribe invited Luke to stay for the evening, and though he had never been inside an Apache camp before, he accepted with gratitude. This was important, not just for Nalan, but for himself. He wanted to understand more about her world, the world she had lived in since the day she was forced to leave his hometown. As night fell, campfires were lit, sending warm light flickering across the ground. The smell of roasted food drifted through the air. People sat in small groups, talking quietly or sharing stories. Luke sat near Nalan, who translated when needed. Many in the tribe asked polite questions: how he found the tracks, how he freed the horses without being seen, and what made him trust Nalan so quickly. Luke answered honestly, saying that their childhood bond never left him, even if he had not seen her in years. Someone brought out a drum, and a few of the younger men began to play gentle rhythms. A soft kind of music began to fill the camp, steady, calm, and full of meaning. Luke had never heard anything like it. It made him feel peaceful in a way he could not describe. Nalan watched the dancers who moved gracefully around the fire, their shadows stretching across the ground. After a while, the old man from earlier approached and sat beside them. He spoke to Nalan first, then looked at Luke with a thoughtful expression. Nalan translated his words with care. "He says you acted with honesty and courage," she explained. "He says not many from the outside world choose to help when there is nothing to gain. He is grateful for what you did." Luke felt humbled. "I didn't do it for praise," he said. "I did it because it was right, and because it was Nalan." Nalan glanced at him, slightly surprised by the softness in his voice, but she did not speak. The old man nodded slowly, as if he understood the meaning behind Luke's words, even without hearing them in his own language. Then he stood and walked back to the others, leaving Luke and Nalan alone near the fire. For a long moment they watched the glowing flames in silence. The fire crackled gently, sparks drifting into the dark sky. Above them, stars spread across the sky like silver dust. Luke had always loved stars on quiet nights, but tonight they seemed brighter than before. Nalan finally turned to him. "You have changed," she said softly. "You are not the same boy I left behind." Luke laughed gently. "I hope that's a good thing." "It is," Nalan replied. "You are stronger now, but still kind. That is rare." Luke felt her words settle deeply in him. He realized that for years he had wondered what happened to her, where she had gone, who she had become, and whether she ever remembered the boy who used to follow her around the woods. Now, sitting beside her again, it felt like a circle had finally closed. "So when you walked into that trading post," Luke said with a smile, and said, "Don't you recognize me, Cowboy?" I was shocked. Nalan laughed quietly. "I could see that," she said, "but I had to say something. You looked so serious. I wasn't sure if you would believe me." Luke nodded. "It sounded like something you would say." You always like surprising me." A soft breeze passed through the camp, rustling the leaves of nearby trees. The firelight flickered, painting warm colors across Nalin's face. She looked peaceful, but also strong. Stronger than the girl he once knew, but still carrying the same gentle spirit. Luke shifted slightly closer. "I'm glad you found me," he said softly. "If you hadn't, I don't know if our paths would ever cross again." Nalin looked into his eyes, her expression calm but full of emotion. "I am glad too," she said. "I never forgot you, Luke. Even when I left, I kept the memories close." Her quiet honesty warmed him more than the fire ever could. As the night grew deeper, the camp grew quieter. Children fell asleep beside their mothers, older men finished their stories, and even the horses settled down near the edge of the camp. Only a few fires still glowed, and the stars seemed to watch silently from above. Luke and Nalin stood and walked a little away from the others until they reached a small hill overlooking the land. The moon was bright, lighting the ground in soft silver. Nalin looked out toward the horizon. "Tomorrow will be peaceful," she said. "The horses are home. My people can rest again." Luke nodded. "And what about you? What will you do now?" Nalin thought for a moment. "I will stay here. This is my home, but—" She paused, turning to him with gentle eyes. "You can visit, if you wish. You are always welcome." Luke's heart lifted. "I would like that," he said. A lot. There were no big promises, no sudden decisions, no rushed words, just a simple truth between them, a connection that had survived years of distance and returned stronger than before. As they walked back toward the camp, Luke felt a sense of peace he had not known in a long time. He had come to this land as a tired cowboy searching for rest. He found something much greater, friendship, trust, and perhaps something deeper waiting to grow in time. Nalin walked beside him, their steps quiet on the soft earth. When they reached the edge of the firelight, she smiled at him, the same warm smile he remembered from long ago. "Welcome back, cowboy," she said softly. And for the first time in years, Luke felt truly at home,